My next guest had a comfortable and conventional job, but this storyteller at heart desired something different. Having dabbled in global humanitarian work, she longed to advocate for others while also entertaining. So she naturally entered a contest with Oprah to win her own show. Of course, that's what one does. And although she didn't win, she decided to pursue filmmaking anyway. Now she's an Emmy-nominated and award-winning filmmaker. She's currently creating the show Now with Fiona, where she shares inspiring stories from the LGBTQ community about kindness and courage in the face of adversity. And today, she's going to share some less highlighted history nuggets you might have missed in school. Professional storyteller, purveyor of justice, white bisexual Oprah, Fiona Dawson!
Oh, Meredith, I think that's the best interpretation of my bio I've ever heard. Thank you very much.
You know, anything that I can do to contribute to your goal of being the white bisexual Oprah, I'm here for you. I'm here.
I appreciate that. That's great. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be using this recording for future introductions.
Oh, good. Excellent. Well, I just love your ability to share stories. I think it's such a great skill. I think when you look at, we're talking about history, when you look into the history of different cultures, it was always the storytellers that were responsible for carrying forward important traditions and lessons, and they weren't just about entertainment. And I just love that you pair so nicely the education advocacy piece with the entertainment piece. So I would love to know, when did that all start for you? When did you know that you had to tell stories?
Well, thank you. And I mean, really, we are all natural born storytellers. If you look back in history and time, back into the cave people's days, they were telling stories by painting stories on walls. Every time we pick up the telephone, or do we pick up phones anymore? I don't know. But every time we answer the telephone, we're always telling a story. And so for me, I just have innately been passionate about people. Like my college degree is in psychology. So I'm always fascinated about how people work and how people tick. And it was really realizing through organizations like GLAD that, do studies and research and demonstrate that the more we know people and understand people, the more we can change hearts and minds and advocate. And so, it's proven that storytelling does build equality for human rights. And, that's my ultimate goal and passion, is to build a world where everyone has equal rights, respect, and responsibility. And just using film and media to achieve that end is something just makes me feel alive. So you got to do what makes you feel alive.
That is so true. And you're so right about storytelling, because it takes ideas and concepts and something that, oh, that's nice, and it makes it human.
Exactly. Like, we all have different personality styles, and so we communicate to other people in different ways, and we like to receive communication in different ways. And the best type of presentation is going to be a good balance of facts and figures and data and statistics, but wrapped into a story. It's the story that makes it memorable. And some people, not me, will remember numbers much easier. But if you want to engage an audience and make something impactful and memorable, then they're going to remember the story, because the story makes you feel, right? It evokes emotion. And I think we've often heard that you may not remember what's the beginning of it. You don't remember, what someone said, but you remember how they made you feel. And so if I can make an audience feel compassion and feel love and feel kindness and feel inspiration and feel hopeful through my stories, then, I'm doing my job.
I agree completely. And you're so up to date on, or so it seems, so I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem very up to date, more than me, with policies and various court cases affecting the LGBTQ community, so many of which would give a person a reason to be angry and frustrated and embittered. But not only your demeanor, but also the way you present your films is in such a bright way. How do you stay so positive when you also are not blind to the negative things that are happening?
If you look back in time, the only way that we did achieve change is, by staying positive. Like, one of the people that inspired me in the past is Harvey Milk. who is a gay icon, one of the first openly gay elected officials in the United States, the first to be elected at the San Francisco City Council. And he joined the City Council in 1977, and he received death threats daily for being out, for being gay, at a time when homosexuality just was not understood and seen as a threat to institutions. And in the face of all of that animosity, he was determined to inspire people with hope. Like, he has many famous quotes, and one of them is, "Should a bullet enter my brain, let that bullet destroy every closet door." And in fact, in 1978, a year after being elected into office, a bullet did indeed enter his brain and he died. He was assassinated, but his message of hope can live on through us all. And I see that today in the people that I meet. Like, I stay hopeful because I'm in contact with other people who are doing incredible things. And, we all have our off days, and, myself included, but we have a choice where we can live with hope and positivity, or we can live with negativity and depression. And either one of those choices, the external situation doesn't change necessarily. I find if I live with hope and positivity, then things move forward better. Like, you feel better, and when you feel better, you kind of manifest more positivity in your life. So I just kind of like trying to loop back and remind myself with that.
I love that
answers the question.
No, it does completely. That and yeah, it does completely. I love that the heart of the answer was that the people that you talk with inspire you, and they keep you going. And that Harvey Milk quote, it chills. I had goosebumps. Like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. There's so many undertold stories in the LGBTQ community, and I am certainly becoming aware of them, because literally from the first day that I saw you at the Pensacola Little Theater, I've had to do a lot of Googling. I'm like, I don't know what the Stonewall riots are. I don't know who Edie Windsor is. Like, I don't know who any of these people. So what's, when it comes to untold or undertold history in this community, what are some things that you feel that my listeners should know about or be curious about? We like to use that word here.
Well, first of all, Meredith, I have to say, when you asked me if I'd be interviewed on the history of LGBTQ relationships in society, I kind of freaked out, to be honest with you. I was like, what the what? Because, okay, I'm openly bisexual. I'm part of the LGBTQ community. I'm a passionate storyteller, but there's absolutely no way I'm going to claim that I know everything about the history of LGBTQ relationships. So I had to do some Googling myself. Okay?
I love it. That's great.
I just want to start by I do not want any listener out there to think that this woman, Fiona, thinks she knows everything about LGBTQ relationships, because I do not, okay? But I can speak from what inspired me from my Google research, but also from my lived experience and the people that I've met. And I'm going to make sure that you have a few links so your listeners can pop onto some websites from Gay Star News and The Advocate. And I'm going to throw some interesting things. In fact, because I'm bisexual, I have to start by telling you that apparently, right, this is one of the weirdest, coolest facts that's on Gay Star News. They said that the earliest porn is 3,000 years old.
What?
And it's bisexual.
Really?
Yes. So there's images of people of different genders doing different sexual acts to each other in different combinations. And so it's deemed to be the earliest point, 3,000 years old. So first of all, let's say I'm not a historian, so I'm afraid I cannot tell you relationships for the last 3,000 to 5,000 years. But you also said, like, pick something that you're really passionate about, that really moves you. And for me, it's surprising that it's surprising that people would not know who Edie Windsor is. So here's her autobiography, okay, up there, right? And the reason why I ended up settling on Edie Windsor, because within the LGBTQ community, like, she's very commonplace, and so you wanted something surprising. And within the LGBTQ community, Edie's not surprising, because essentially she had the courage to take the United States government to court, and she won at the Supreme Court and paved the way for marriage equality, which is such a big part of our movement. But I'm nearly finished, like, reading her autobiography here, and one of the reasons why I picked her was I actually met Edie.
Oh.
Edie died in 2017.
Oh no, I didn't know that. I just started watching the Prolonged Engagement documentary last night. I got through half of it last night, and I was like, I hope this lady is still alive, and you just crushed it. Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay.
No, she did die. No, Edie died at the age of 88. And she was 83 years old when she won at the Supreme Court. So this woman in her 80s changed American history. So one of the takeaways that I have from this is it's never too late. You know, it's like you don't have to start a passion project or start changing the world at a certain age. Like whenever in your time, whenever in your history, you just do it. And in reading Edie's autobiography, like she admittedly had a very privileged life. Like her and her wife Thea had money. You know, they were affluent. They were able to access the things that they need. They lived a beautiful, exuberant life, you know, and had cocktail parties and wore beautiful clothes and had nice jewelry and then just enjoyed the finer things in life. So in 1969, when the Stonewall riots kicked off at the Stonewall Inn in New York, Edie and Thea were having a luxury vacation touring Europe, you know, and they had no idea that this was going on. And so they came from very different worlds. And it's easy for any of us to judge people for the way they choose to live their life. And, I know many different people. I know people boots on the ground, all the way up to people like Edie Windsor, who lived a life of privilege and, you know, lived on Fifth Avenue. But it shows that everything in life is a spectrum. You know, there's not a right way or wrong way of doing anything. I think the best right way to do anything is just to live authentically and have an authentic life. And so, of course, in 1969, you know, you didn't have access to media the way we do now. So they didn't know about the riots until they got back. And the part of her and her wife, Thea, it feels like, because they didn't feel like they belonged to that community. They didn't get engaged until later. And in fact, it's interesting to read how, you know, the AIDS crisis here in America had a significant impact within and external to the LGBTQ community. And it kind of broke down walls and barriers between different communities. There'd been a lot of discrimination based on gender, you know, gays on this beach and lesbians on this beach. And the lack of visibility for bisexuality is a whole other story that I'll get to in a bit. But there's this very like binary divide between gays and lesbians, and HIV/AIDS kind of broke that down. And what I, you know, found fascinating is, like, again, I haven't yet finished, but I do know the end already. But it's better to read it in her own words. That, you know, when Edie's wife Thea died, Edie was left, she didn't have the same benefits that a marriage, if her marriage had been recognized, would have benefited her. So she would have had estate taxes. And so that's where she fought that she should not be subject to these estate taxes because their marriage should be recognized. And the Supreme Court, you know, sided with her. And within the LGBTQ community rights movement, there are arguments where, there's too much focus on marriage equality. You know, there are so many other issues like employment discrimination, access to healthcare, you know, violence and murder against us. Like today, we still don't have federal protections. You can be fired in around 29 states for being LGBTQ. With our new administration, that's probably going to change. So we may eventually pass an Equality Act. But really, I was listening to another podcast where Jennifer Finney Boylan, transgender woman, she's a professor at Barnard College in New York. She's very, very educated and knows a lot more about LGBTQ policy than I do. But she interestingly said that what marriage equality did was it changed the narrative around LGBTQ relationships from sex to love. And to love was what, you know, people could grasp. And if you weren't LGBTQ, you could get that. And again, I need to credit Jenny Boylan for saying that, not me. And so, and so just to think that Edie did that because she lived a life of love.
She did.
And she openly talks about how her and Thea had a lot of hot sex as well.
Yes, she does.
You know, and the whole conversation about sex could be happening, you know, like I'm sex positive as well. You know, that's a whole other podcast interview. But in addition to really hot, steamy sex, they had love, you know, you know, I think most human beings can relate to the desire to love and be loved. And that's what marriage did. And now, of course, our work continues where we do need equality acts. We need full equal protections under the law, and we need cultural inclusion. And the cultural inclusion piece, I think one of the biggest drivers is film and television. So.
And the seeing these stories play out in their specificity and their nuances, and watching the it's on YouTube, a very long engagement, or I forget what it's called, but with the two of them, you could really see their relationship, and seeing those parts of a specific couple or a specific individual, and then remembering 1950.
Yeah.
1950. That is what I think. I don't know if I might be the only person that's impressed by that. I hope not. I just feel like there's an unfortunate thought that, it's so trendy to be gay. No. And it's also not a new thing, because I understand there's some folks that are like, well, that's, like a new phenomenon. But as you said, 3,000-year-old. Was that Greece, by the way?
Oh gosh.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
You put me on the spot. But I'll send the link. But in addition to that, 2,400 BC, in the year 2,400 years BC before Christ, is known to be the first oldest recorded gay people, because their remains were found in a typical position where married couples were put, and it's inscribed joined in life and joined in death. And so it's two men basically who've been buried together as a couple. And so yes, people have been not straight and not cisgender. And by the way, if anyone needs to understand and have a basic definition of cisgender, then I will include that in a link as well. Yes. But just know that if you're not transgender, it means you are cisgender. Most of the population is cisgender. And so, through the course of humanity, structures of what sexuality is and what gender is never used to be in the binary way that we look at them. In my mind, it appears like back when humanity first started, we didn't have the social structure, the definition of what gender was or what sexuality was. Human beings were able to express their wants and desires just how they were, without being told, oh no, you've been told you're male, so therefore you can only do this with a female, and and vice versa. It wasn't binary. And I think that over the course of time, and one of the interesting words here is colonization. We think of colonization, countries like Britain going over and taking over land masses and putting in their structures. And not only were we racist in that endeavor and enslaved people in that endeavor, but we trapped people into binary ways of thinking and logic. And so this decolonization, I feel like, is happening, not just now with breaking down racism and those kinds of structures in society, but decolonizing our understanding of relationships and of gender and of sexuality. And it's almost like humanity already was more woke thousands of years ago. I mean, and again, I could be talking out my ass right here because, I'm not a historian, but this is my interpretation of what I'm seeing and hearing and reading, in that, things were more fluid, yes. Was it Julius Caesar even? Like there are like Hadrian's. I grew up being taught about Hadrian's Wall, which was this wall that divided between Scotland and England. And I was just reading that apparently even Hadrian, is documented as having relationships with men as well. So, it's not a new phenomenon. It's not suddenly cool. And we still face a lot of stigma and discrimination, that we're overcoming. So.
Well, I think it's so funny. I'm really laughing at myself right now because I often see patterns show up when I record podcasts. So this is a small rabbit trail that I promise I will return from.
No problem.
But I just recorded a podcast with a woman who is a sex educator in India, a few hours ago. And girl, we just talked about this. It's so crazy. And I'm like, Fiona didn't even know that we were talking about decolonization. And get this, this is why history to me is so impactful, at least personally, because she said that when India was colonized, not just by Great Britain, but, lots of people wanted India, that they took their ancient scripts and they hid them. So they literally caused them to forget their own history and erase their history. And what I feel like is such a powerful lesson from that in connection to learning history and digging up these undertold stories is that it provides such a valuable perspective that more or less cannot be disputed. We can always argue about, how history is told and from the perspective it's told from, but that happened. The Stonewall riots happened. All the things that you're mentioning, they were real. And so it causes you to take a broader look at what you're accepting as true or not true. So I can't believe we're like almost out of time. This is blowing my mind. I love chatting with you. I think people I'm sure my listeners can already understand why you're such an engaging storyteller. Is there a way with either your past projects or the ones that you are coming up that people can stay in touch with you to get more of Fiona?
Oh, please, you can have as much Fiona as you want. I give it away, and currently I'm giving it away for free, but
it's like Mardi Gras Fiona, like for everyone.
Oh, yes, by the way, I have to show my sweater. You see, I'm born to love.
I love it. I bought this just for ours. It says love on it as well. I was I have to match. Your t-shirt game is strong. So, so where can people...
Makes the world goes round. Okay, I would love for people to go to my website, nowwithfiona.com. and sign up there for my newsletter, follow me on social and do all of those things. I am currently in development on my unscripted TV series called Now with Fiona. I'm Fiona, where I'm hosting and I'm sharing stories that are unexpected from the LGBTQ community, centered around kindness and courage, in the face of adversity. So when you might typically imagine that something negative is happening, I don't deny the negativity, but I'm going to inspire you through the positive thing that somebody's doing to make it better. So we are working to get that to people's screens as soon as possible. So we have a proof of concept episode that we're shopping around, and so I'll be glad to share things, the trailers on there and that kind of stuff. Plus, I have explainers I'm in the development of doing. So there's a cisgender, transgender explainer. If you know nothing, or if you know someone who knows nothing, go watch and share that. And I'm building a library of that to explain all of the terms and definitions within the LGBTQ community. So I would love anyone to stay in touch and watch what happens next. And I'd be remiss to say Stonewall wasn't the first riot either. So look up, what the first riot was. I believe the one before that was Compton in Los Angeles, but there's so much of the LGBTQ history that you couldn't cover it in 30 minutes. I don't think you can cover it in 30 days. But just realizing that we exist and we've always existed, we haven't seen. Just think of us as an iceberg. Yeah, you've only seen 10% of the LGBTQ community. There's so much that is happening all the time. We are a fabric of societies, and our voices are integrated regardless of how you identify.
I couldn't have said it better. That's like the perfect crescendo. Exactly.
Good.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to you. I'm so glad we met, and I hope our paths cross in real life again very soon.
Again. Yeah, likewise. Thank you so much, Meredith.
Awesome. That's a wrap.